Welcome back to Unscripted Liberty. Today we're diving into a real twist in the ongoing story of Marcus Alderson, a man who was recently released after being held in Washington County Jail without bail on 2 misdemeanor charges. Marcus was denied the basic rights most of us take for granted: no visitation, no phone calls, no letters, even restricted access to an attorney. But here's where it gets wild. Not only were Marcus's charges withdrawn on the 28th of October, but now his advocate, Mike Reis, has been hit with charges himself. Let's play a video kind of explaining everything that went on that led to this.
Innocent until proven guilty, right? Well, if you believe that exists in this country, you have been lied to. Right here in Washington County, Pennsylvania, there is a man in the Washington County Correctional Facility that is currently listed as John Doe. The reason for this is that Pennsylvania State Police says that they can't identify him. The Washington County Jail said that they can't identify him. The court said that they can't identify him. This is despite the fact that at the time of his arrest, he gave his real name, Marcus Alderson, and his real date of birth, August 13th, 2000. He provided these 2 things at the time of his arrest, and they still said, "We think you're using an alias." Fair enough. The next day, a true and correct copy of his government-issued ID was provided to the Pennsylvania State Police, to the Clerk of Courts in Washington County, and to the Washington County Jail. Today, they still claim that they cannot identify him. This is after I sent a copy of his ID to all of these places, and my attorney sent a copy of his ID to the Pennsylvania State Police. They are still claiming that they can't identify him. Now, you might be saying, you know what? This is a pretty good tactic because violent felons shouldn't be out on the streets, right? Wrong. This is not a felony. He is being charged with 2 misdemeanors, 2 misdemeanor charges. Now, you might be saying, okay, well, if they're just misdemeanors, that's why the bond system exists, right? You can bond him out and that way he'll be free to walk until his hearing, right? Wrong. The judge set his bond to $50,000. $50,000. This is a first-time offender, okay? A first-time offender, never had a run-in with law enforcement before, on 2 misdemeanor charges. $50,000. Fine. I go to bond him out, and the bondsman goes to the jail, and what do they tell him? Oh, we can't release him right now. He's on suicide watch. This is somebody that wasn't suicidal a day ago, but all of a sudden is suicidal. And you might be saying, you know what? Jail messes with people. He probably got suicidal when he was in there. Clinical will clear him in the morning. That'll be fine. Only that's not what happened at all. The district attorney, the very next morning, decided to file an emergency motion to revoke his bond. They changed the rules of the game just because now somebody was able to pay his bond. And you know what they said? Oh, he's a flight risk and we can't identify him. They're still claiming that they can't identify him. Now, what is he being accused of? Let's take a look at that, right? Here's the witness's own statement saying what Marcus did. This witness is saying that he stood in her bedroom doorway. Not that he ever laid a hand on her. Not that he ever threatened her. Not that he hit her. Not that he pushed her. Nothing. He stood in her bedroom doorway and she was afraid that he would not let her leave. So, we are in this bedroom right now. Here is her bedroom doorway. It goes out into the hallway. You might be thinking, hey, a bedroom, singular point of ingress egress, that would be scary because Marcus is 6'6" and 190 pounds. The witness is 5 feet tall and 100 pounds, right? Sorry, you'd be wrong. Here's her bedroom doorway. Here's another doorway that goes out into the same hallway. There were 2 points of ingress egress on opposite sides of the room. She could have picked either door. This is one person supposedly blocking her bedroom door. Which one of them? So there is absolutely no evidence that this man did anything wrong. He is being held in jail without bond, and because he's there as a John Doe, he can't make a phone call, he can't have a visitor, and he can't talk to an attorney. Now you might be saying, Mike, it's a constitutional right to be provided an attorney, right? Here's the court's own record showing that he has not been advised of his rights, that he's not been offered counsel, and that he can't do anything about it. This guy can't send a letter. This guy can't make a phone call. This guy can't can't get a visitor. This guy can't have his counsel. His rights are being violated, and nobody is doing anything about it. The only thing that must happen for evil to exist in this country is for good people to do nothing, and that's exactly what people are doing right now. Don't be one of those people. Demand the release of Marcus Alderson. Reach out to the state representatives of Pennsylvania. Please help me get this man free. It is life or death.
Well, I've got both Marcus and Mike here with us today. We're going to kind of break down exactly what's going on. And this isn't just one person's story. This is an example of how broken our justice system is and how far it's willing to go to silence those who stand up. So, let's get ready. We got this episode is about fighting back, exposing the truth, and demanding justice. So I want to thank both Marcus and Mike for being on. Appreciate it. You guys want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, hi, I'm Michael Reis, and
I'm Marcus.
Yeah, so we kind of went over with what led to your arrest, Marcus. How did it feel when you realized that your basic rights were pretty much stripped away from you?
It's like the only way to describe it is kind of just scary and then also terrifying, because it's like I'm just stripped of any information that would give me any clue to what's happening. So they just basically forced me to be in the dark with no knowledge of what was going on.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be scary, being where you don't have you're basically blind and deaf to everything that's going on. So it's almost like it's like a form of like mental torture and neglect, because you're totally confused in what's going on. So this one's for you, Mike. You were one of Marcus's biggest advocates on the outside, obviously by the video. How did you first get involved, and what made you kind of take up the fight to help him?
well, I was there when Marcus was arrested. So this happened at Marcus's home, and it's a home that he and I shared together that we were subsequently evicted from because of all of this. And so I was there. I watched all this happen. I interacted with the police that day. And when they brought him out in handcuffs, they said, oh, we just have to do a suspect ID. You'll be able to pick him up tonight. And honestly, in that moment, I thought it was funny. I really did. I thought that it was going to be something that he was going to get out and we were going to get some McDonald's and laugh all about it, how he was some big criminal and spent the night in jail, and then just hours go by with no information. And then that panic starts to set in of, oh my God, what's happening to my friend? After trying every method of recourse, contacting everybody that I could, it just became obvious that there was going to be no way through this without going to the media, without trying to get more eyes on it and applying some pressure to get that information.
Yeah. So, Marcus, how did it feel when you found out that they were withdrawing the charges on you? Did it seem like justice was served, or did it feel like you were waiting for the other shoe to drop?
I guess I was just kind of relieved to get out of there, because it was a place that was forcing me to be in the dark. So it was kind of relieved to just get away from all of that and not be forced to be near it or be forced to kind of be that deep in the dark. So it's very relieving to me.
And talk about the paranoia afterwards.
So when I was released, I was kind of very paranoid for a couple days after that. They're just gonna randomly pick me up again for no reason. So whenever I was driving or doing whatever, I was always just checking, just looking around everywhere just to make sure that wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah, I definitely I would probably be the same way, of being waiting for the other shoe to drop, or have them be like, okay, are they gonna pull me over because they know what my car is, and do I have my license on me? Do I have identification? Can I prove who I am? I would be terrified. I wouldn't go anywhere. I really wouldn't. And so now, Mike, you have it that so Marcus's charges were dropped. And now you're facing charges. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, it just seems like
Yeah.
almost like retaliation.
So, and that's how it feels as well. I had made these TikTok videos, and as far as I'm concerned, I have a First Amendment right, and I was talking about the facts of this case and the facts of what Pennsylvania State Police were doing and what our judicial system was doing to this innocent man. And despite that, nobody had seen Marcus in over a week. Nobody had heard from Marcus in over a week at that point. There were a lot of concerns for his safety. There was a lot of concern over whether he was alive or not. So I could see through the UJS portal when his preliminary hearing was scheduled, and these hearings are public. So I figured, okay, I'll attend, and that way I'll actually be able to see him. So that's exactly what I did. I went to his hearing, and I signed in at the front desk. They asked me what I was there for. I told them. They said, okay, have a seat. We'll call you back. After a while, they called me back, but it was really weird because Marcus's hearing was being concluded. They were printing off paperwork and things like that. So I turned to the state trooper that brought me in, and I said, is he being released? What's going on? And the state trooper said, yeah, he's being released. And I said, thank God. He said, but you're being arraigned today. Literally, as soon as they got done handing Marcus his paperwork and releasing him, the magistrate calls me up to the defendant's side, and they arrest me on the spot. They arraign me on the spot and set my bond to $10,000. And as a condition of my bond, I was to have absolutely no contact with Marcus, including making any videos about any of this. The magistrate was very specific about that. And then obviously no contact with the complaining witness either. So they set these conditions on my bond, take me to jail. Thank God for my wife. She knew right away that something was wrong when I wasn't responding. She found out and got me bailed out. But then after that, no contact with Marcus, none whatsoever, despite the fact that we share resources, we share money, we share a house, we share places of work. There's no way to live life without communication like that. I tried bringing this up to the magistrate. I tried bringing this up to just anybody that would listen, and they said, tough luck. So thank God we got an attorney. We got all of that resolved. And thankfully, as of today at 3 p.m., that no contact order was lifted. And I was able to talk with Marcus again. And I put out an update video on TikTok as well, now that I'm able to do that. But yeah, totally scary.
That's just mind-boggling. And it's you're in Pennsylvania, I'm in Pennsylvania. It's just, I am speechless at everything.
Yeah,
but not surprised that is how things are done.
This whole part of I was attending his hearing as a concerned friend who had done nothing wrong, and now I'm being arrested in a public courtroom. My first thought is I have coins in the meter. I'm parked outside. I came here of my own will. I wasn't pulled in here in handcuffs. And they're just going to take me to jail. That entire thing was just so unbelievable. I would have never thought something like that could happen in this country, not to mention my hometown.
Yeah, it's just so. Marcus, I'm pretty much bouncing back and forth between the two of you. Going, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but going back to when you were in, what was it like? I think we touched on this, being isolated without any contact to the world. How did you cope with being denied basic communication? Were you trying to come up with any ideas of how can I prove who I am? Here, take my DNA, do something. Were you befriending somebody? Yo, dude, get a message to the outside for me. I'm alive. Tell them something. What was going on? Was the suicide thing just a ploy on their end just to keep you in longer, or were you actually having these thoughts where this is the end, I'm gonna die in here and I'm gonna die as John Doe?
So I was so when they first brought me in, they I guess they're still denying who I was, and so they told me that they're putting me in this specific room because they don't know who I am. So to me, it's not because I was suicidal, because I didn't ever become suicidal, because I always believed I was going to get out at some point. But yeah, they told me I went into that room specifically because they didn't like know who I was or believed who I was. So I was in just an absolutely terrible room for my first 4 days there, and then after
First
that,
9 days.
yeah, for my first 9 days, it was kind of just confusing to keep up with the time for how long. But they told me that they like would finally like release me from that room because apparently like my mom was just calling each day, but I was never able to like talk to her. So that's like the only way that I was like starting to believe that they might finally like pick up on who I am. But otherwise I was just like afraid to talk to like any of them because I believe they just use it against me.
But to clarify, you never said, I'm suicidal, I want to hurt myself, I want to hurt anybody else, anything like that.
No, they'd like ask me that each day and I'd always just say no to that, but they still just like kept me in that room.
It's funny because my first nursing job was a county correctional nursing position by me. So it's like I know from the medical side of what's done and how things are run and the basic concept of county corrections. And I'm still like I still can't wrap my head around this. So Mike, you were really vocal in raising awareness for Marcus. How important is public support in cases like this, and how did the community respond to your efforts?
It's everything. It is everything. You know, the reason that corruption is so prevalent in our country is because people's attention spans have gotten a lot smaller, and what people care about has become a lot more vague as time has gone on. So in Marcus's case, and now in my case as well, having the public eye on this makes it a lot harder for that corruption to exist. I'll give you a really good example of this in Marcus's case. For the majority of his incarceration, for the vast majority of it, they had him listed in jail as John Doe, right? They were just refusing to identify him. So I created this first TikTok. I put it on the internet. It hits 100,000 views like immediately, right? And this really talented and fantastic attorney in Florida by the name of Sheila got involved, and she's a criminal defense attorney. So she started emailing the jail to the warden directly and asking a ton of really difficult questions that would have like basically proved that they were violating his rights. It was less than 2 hours from the point that she sent those emails to the point that his name was updated to Marcus Alderson in their systems, right? So without having made that TikTok, without having shined that light on this, he might still be in there. You know what I mean? Like without that level of public pressure, there's no way of knowing like how long it's going to take them if they ever decide to actually do the right thing. So I think what the community needs to do in cases like this is try to overcome that attention deficit. I get it, on a 5-minute video, it's hard to sit through and watch. On an hour-long podcast, it's hard to sit through and pay attention the entire time. But these issues are complex and they take time to explain. And when you shine a light on them, the world gets to be a little bit of a better place. So I think the biggest thing that the community can do is try to overcome a little bit of that attention deficit.
Yeah, it definitely, like, your video at least was like really had a lot of emotion and excitement in it, so that at least had something going to keep some attention and stuff. And I'm just sitting there going like my jaw's on the ground when my husband showed it to me. I'm like, are they kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous. So
Yeah.
Marcus, now that you're out, what are your thoughts on transparency and accountability in the justice system? Like, what would you like to see change from your experience?
I guess like I don't even know how you like begin to like fix this, because it just seems like there's so many like different pieces of like where it went wrong, so I don't even know like where you'd start to like try and fix what happened.
Yeah. Did this kind of like open your eyes to like start being an advocate for like justice system reform?
Yeah, because like with what happened, it's kind of just like unbelievable that technically like could happen to like me and then to someone else. So
Yeah.
it really like opened my eye. Like I opened my eyes up to it.
Yeah, I'm afraid to see how many other people might in across the state, other states in the country are going through what you have because they don't have family or friends or anyone to on the outside to advocate for them and vouch for them or even know that they're in. That they might have someone that they don't talk to. Like you're lucky that Mike saw you get arrested because otherwise they would have thought you just like dropped off the face of the planet.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy that he did that because I honestly don't know if I would have been able to be released if that didn't happen. And that's kind of
Yeah.
just an absolutely like terrifying thought to me.
So I know Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania, we're working on a resolution, and my husband and I and stuff are also working on it, basically condemning this type of behavior. Because it's you're a resident of Pennsylvania, like why wouldn't we get involved and join this fight? Um, how does it make you feel that you pretty much have an entire political party now like ready to fight on your side?
Very good. It's always like better to have more people to fight for what's right and to push that movement forward rather than be it just him and I. So
Yeah.
it's very comforting to like know that there's more support.
Now, Mike, how can the community support you now that you're facing charges yourself? Like, what actions can people take to stand up to basically retaliation?
I think that the biggest thing that I'd like to see our community start doing is to show some teeth and to fight back. I have been very, very, very fortunate in life. My wife and I have been incredibly blessed financially. We've done very well for ourselves. So in my case, I've been able to talk to the best of the best attorneys. I've been able to find great representation across the board. And my business attorney, he's fantastic. His name is Brockton Skeen. He's with the Skeen firm. He had a very interesting point. He said his belief, as far as the reason that so many cases like this happen, is that not enough people sue the government. Not enough people actually do anything when stuff like this happens. And of course, doing things like watching videos or, putting out hashtags on Instagram or leaving comments, of course, that helps shine a light on it. But actually standing up for your rights and taking action whenever you see people's rights being violated, I think is critically important. These Section 1983 and 1986 lawsuits are incredibly effective at getting people indemnified when stuff like this happens. And I think more people need to familiarize themselves with their rights and demand that their rights are respected, as opposed to simply looking at those rights being violated.
Yeah, we need to hold them accountable and show all of these issues so that when people have it happen to them, they're not going to be afraid to be and say something, that they're going to be like, oh, it happened to them. I'm going to say something too, because I want to add in, it's start getting into like the class action suit type mentality. Like it happened to him, it happened to her, it happened to that guy over there. Obviously something's going on here that needs to be fixed.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a lot of the times we see a lot of these issues come up as a result of a prison industrial complex where, jails and prisons are heavily financially incentivized to keep inmates in there, especially longer than 30 days. So in this case, the government's making it very clear what they care about. And what they care about is money. And I think that needs to be the way in which they're held accountable. I think these civil lawsuits need to be a lot more prevalent. I think that people need to familiarize themselves with when they should sue and how they could sue and things like that. And they need to get involved in actions like this to hit them in the pocketbook, because that's the only way they're going to start caring about violating people's rights.
Yeah. So this one goes out to both. How can people stay informed and involved to prevent things like this happening again or happening to other people? Like, what's the most effective way do you guys feel to make a difference?
I don't even know. I don't even know how to fix it because I only have my perspective, and that was just being completely in the dark, not being able to reach out or like do anything. So I don't even know how, like, being on the inside, I could like fix that scenario, because like once you're there, it's not like you can get to any resource to help. You're just kind of locked there and like forced to do what they want.
I think from my perspective, the biggest way that people can stay informed and to get involved is to start changing perspectives a little bit. People need to quit thinking that this can't happen to them. It absolutely can. And if we don't do anything about it, it absolutely will. That's number one. Number two is we need to change the way that we're thinking about pretrial inmates. We have a presumption of innocence in this country. You are supposed to be innocent until you're proven guilty. So we need to stop demonizing people who are in jails. We need to stop demonizing the orange jumpsuit. And we need to start asking clarifying questions when we hear about people's interactions like that. If you're being accused of a crime, all a cop needs is probable cause to throw you in jail. That's the honest to God's truth of it. At your preliminary hearing, all they need is prima facie. At the surface level, does it seem more likely than not that you committed this crime? That's all they need to proceed with that. It's not until you get to the trial level or the superior court level that you will either be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt or guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. So with this, we have to start changing the way that we're viewing people that have gone to jail or people that have been in handcuffs. I promise you, if not for this experience, you would never be able to pick me out of a lineup and say, that guy's been to jail before. Because I have a thriving business in my community. I employ people who wouldn't have had a chance otherwise. I'm a regular attendee of my church. I'm a good functioning member of society. And this happened to me. If it's going to happen to me, it absolutely can and will happen to you. So we have to change the way we think.
Yeah, because I honestly, looking and seeing Marcus here, I'm like, I don't think he could hurt a fly.
Exactly.
Like, he's a man of very few words, it seems like. Like, I honestly, between the two of you, if I had a pick, I would have thought you, Mike. Like, you seem a little bit more confrontational of the two of you. But,
Exactly. Exactly. Like, Marcus is the type of person, his kitten Scott means everything to him. He sits at home and plays video games and reads and studies and has a great relationship with his parents and his family. I mean, he's a good guy. This isn't the type of person that gets in trouble easily. And again, none of this happened. And that's the most mind-boggling part, is this is all coming from one cop's word saying, I believe that this is what took place. And the mountain of evidence didn't matter. Only the public eyes did. Only the public pressure did. It only started getting better when people started sending emails, threatening lawsuits, and demanding that his rights be respected.
Yeah, so how is this is for you, Marcus, like, how is your family like coped with this and dealt with all of this? Because like I have a 15-year-old, so like 10 years down the road, like if this happened to my son, who's pretty much just like you, video games, books, and keeps to himself, like if this happened to him, I'd be like, are you kidding me? That kid, like, I don't think he says 2 words to a girl. Like, what's going on?
So when I was like released, I still like didn't directly have my phone because the officer had it. So for at least like a day after being released, I had no way to communicate with them. And then I think the day after that, I was finally able to get a phone. And then I called my mom, and she was just like in tears, just worried about me, because she wasn't really even being told too much about what was going on when I was in there. So I just talked to her about what happened, and then she was just kind of crying the whole time, and like finally glad that she could talk to me and that she could like finally know that I was fine and safe. And then after that,
she was doing the typical mother. Okay, your head good. Yeah. Okay, we got a head, we got 2 arms, we got 2 hands, 2 feet. Okay.
And then after that, I called my dad, and he was also just extremely worried. And so I guess like he was more worried than her, because he like, I think a year back, he's in a car accident, so it messed up his brain. So he's like very like anxious and mostly sad all the time. So he was just like bawling, and like him not being able to talk to me while I was in there really messed with him too. So that was really just hard to hear how he was doing, but he was glad he can like hear me and that he knew I was alive, because that was kind of like just messing with him a lot.
Yeah,
So
it sounds like your friends and family like were going through like stages of grief because they didn't know what was going on. So they're like, how do I handle this? Like, am I gonna see him again? Am I gonna talk to him again? It's the sudden absence is almost like, it sounds like they were going through levels of grief.
yeah,
So
and I know it was affecting them a lot as well, because I know both my parents just said to me they couldn't sleep over it while I was in there. So I know it must not have been easy, but it also like it's just a horrible situation.
yeah. So it sounds like, from what you had said, it sounds like you were probably in segregated housing, which is like isolation. Did they
Yeah.
ever have you in Gen Pop at any point?
Like kind of near the end, they finally put me in there, but I assume that was just from all the outreach from like everyone online. Otherwise, I don't think that would have happened. Because while I was in there, they'd like always check on me for like being suicidal or like ask if I was, and I'd always tell them, and then they just would kind of ignore that, it seemed. And then I don't know what day it was, but they told me, oh, like you'll be able to go in general pop. And then they kind of just didn't move me. And then even if I try to like get the guy's attention who had like told me that, they kind of just ignored me. So they kind of just left me in there to like do nothing and to just still like be in the dark, not being able to talk to anybody.
Yeah, like I don't know if this is just for like my listeners and stuff like that, because again, I have the familiarity with correctional stuff. Segregated housing, most of the time you guys are 23 hours a day of isolation with an hour of like out of your cells. Is that, or were you 24/7?
I was basically in there 24/7. Like
Because they weren't identifying you.
Yeah.
Okay, because I said normally it's 23 hours with an hour out and about so that you had a change of scenery. So you were 24/7 in there. That's insane.
And I think, Marcus might be like, I'm sure you can tell he's a man of few words, but, in conversations with him today, he's told me like, so during this time, he's in isolation for 9 days in a room that essentially just has a drain in it, right? During that time, he's asking for a lawyer. He's asking if he can take a shower. He's asking if he's ever going to be out of that cell. He's asking for food. He's asking for water. And all of these basic human rights are just being totally denied with the non-answers from the correctional officers of like, oh, we'll see. Oh, we'll see. Oh, we'll see. Right? I mean, going 9 days without a shower, that can have some health complications. You see what I mean? Like, I mean, this is serious stuff. And, segregated housing is one thing, especially when you think somebody's high risk. But to fully violate an inmate's rights is nothing short of torture.
Per everything else and everywhere else I looked, that is a 100% violation of basic human rights and decency. Like, it just gets worse. The more I talk to you guys, the worse it gets, and the closer to the floor my jaw gets.
Yeah.
So, Mike, from your perspective, what specific reforms do you think would help prevent things like this happening? Like, are there any policies or things that you would like to see put in place from this?
There are 3 pieces of jail reform that I have become very passionate about as a result of Marcus's case and another friend's case as well. The first one, I think, is very common sense, and I think it would make a huge difference. I think that all pretrial inmates need to have unrestricted access to phone calls during regular business hours. I understand that in the earlier age of telephonics, each individual phone call required some level of jail resource. We're now in the digital age. That doesn't exist anymore. So giving inmates, especially pre-trial inmates, these are people that we're presuming to be innocent, access to phone calls during regular business hours will pose no risk to the community because people have to accept those phone calls to begin with. And it will even help law enforcement to identify truly guilty people. Those phone calls are monitored. So if somebody has unrestricted access, they will likely incriminate themselves while being recorded. It will also allow for pretrial inmates to help facilitate their defenses, to be able to contact friends and family, and to keep their sanity, because our mental health is just as important as our physical health. That's number one. Number two, we are in the digital age. We need to give inmates that same level of access to emails. There are a lot of attorneys and a lot of even public defenders and court-appointed attorneys that cannot easily be reached by phone. You need to be able to send emails, not only to facilitate your own defense, but also, and perhaps more importantly, to be able to document the abuses that you're suffering. If you talk to any person in law enforcement and a lot of people in the judicial branch in general, they will give you the same advice if you've been the victim of a crime, which is to write everything down as quickly as you possibly can, because you might forget important details about your case. Here's a prime example of this. You have somebody that was held in isolation for 9 days with their rights being violated. How much did he forget that happened during that time? Because he wasn't given access to email or any way to document this. If he had had access to these communication systems, it would have not only facilitated his defense and expedited his release, but it also would have helped some of his rights to prevent being violated. The third piece of reform that I think is critically important is that all requests from pretrial inmates need to be documented, and they need to be responded to with either an affirmative or a negative within 24 hours of the request being made. So, for example, if Marcus is requesting a shower, this is a basic human right. This is a very basic thing. If they want to deny him his shower, then they should be held accountable to that denial. They should have to face the public reaction when Marcus gets out and says, for 9 days, I requested a shower, and all 9 days it was denied. That should be documented. That needs to be documented. We can't continue to allow these non-answers to happen and expect for correctional officers to start treating inmates correctly.
Yeah, it's similar. It should be handled similar with, like we do with nursing, is you have it. If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. So
Yep.
you're having them saying, well, I never said he couldn't get a shower. He never asked me. And it's like,
And that's exactly what we experienced. Because when I had asked, why isn't Marcus being given access to a phone call? They said, oh, he never requested one. For one, he shouldn't have to. But for another, now we find out that he did request those phone calls. For 13 days straight, he requested these phone calls. So since that documentation doesn't exist, it just becomes a matter of testimony. Correctional officer says, no, he never asked me. And he says, yes, I did ask you. And without that documentation, it's just one word against another.
yeah, and I know a lot with different correctional facilities and stuff. They're very close knit. The gray wall and stuff like that with things, they'll defend each other, good or bad, like either side. Like if they're in the wrong, they'll defend each other, and if they're in the right, they'll defend each other, which is same as the blue wall and everything else. But when it's I would definitely say for 9 days not being able to document or get anything off, you're gonna start sitting there thinking like, wait, did that happen? How did that happen? Wait, was I in this door or that door? Or did I say something? Did I do this? Did I do that? No, I don't know. You start second guessing yourself, and you start going at the end of it. You're like, wait, so did I make that up? Or was that what really happened? And you start really second guessing yourself, don't you?
And I think that this might be something that you'll really relate to on the nursing side. So I also was in the medical field. So you're probably at one point received state mandated reporter training. And for anybody watching this that might not be aware, state mandated reported training means that we, as care providers, have to report to the state in the case that we believe that somebody is a threat to themselves or to others. And if anybody makes a threat against themselves or others, even if we don't believe that's a credible threat, we absolutely have to report it every single time. So it's going to sound like I'm going out in left field, but I promise I'll bring this back. In court, leading questions are not permissible, right? If I'm trying to get your testimony through an examination, I cannot lead you to the answer that I want you to say. Yet somehow, in the executive branch of our government, the combination of these two things is allowed. So when I went to jail, one of the first questions that they asked me are, do you want to hurt yourself or do you want to hurt anybody else? And I said no. And the correctional officer laughed and said, come on, you were just brought to jail. You don't want to hurt anybody. You don't even want to hurt the arresting officer. You want to hurt people. How is that allowed? Because if I answer yes, you're going to throw me in the chute. You're going to throw me in isolation. You're going to commit me. Right. And I know that, having been a state mandated reporter, thank God I have that experience. But Marcus never got that training. Marcus never knew about that. Now, thankfully, he didn't give them the answer that they were looking for. But how many people do? And how the hell is that allowed?
Yeah. Or you have it, too. I've seen it where you have them, they ask it in that tone of joking around. And then they throw it in your face and throw it and stab you in the back with it.
Yep.
And say, like, you think they lure you into a false sense of security. And it's ridiculous. There's so many layers to this that the more I get involved in this and the more I talk to different people between you guys and my last guests, that just peeling back these layers, it's like an onion. It's the more you peel back, the closer to the core you get, the stronger the odor is. And it's insane. So why would you say, or what would you say to others who might be afraid to speak out against injustices like this for fear of retaliation? Like, is there a message you want to share with them?
I don't know, from like coming out and seeing how much support there was and how much kind of people are talking about it, I just say to like try and talk about it as much as you can to get the attention of people, to just have multiple people speaking about it, because to me that seemed to work very well.
Yeah. And what about like with you, Mike, like being that yours sounds very retaliatory?
I think I have maybe a little bit more of an extreme opinion on it, but here's my stance. I think if you have young children who depend on you, or if you have a type of lifestyle where you need to keep yourself safe, you absolutely need to be staying silent right now. Because this government that we have will retaliate against you and they will bite you. But if you are young and single and you don't have those other obligations, if you don't speak up now, we lose this country. We lose our freedoms. We lose our ability to ever have our rights protected ever again. We need people right now that can take the backlash from the government in mass force to demand that people's rights are being respected. So I think if you're the type of person, like in your case, you have a 15-year-old, right? You can't go to jail. That kid relies on you, right? So I think it's very brave what you're doing with this podcast. But I think that especially what's happened to us, it's only a matter of time before you get hit back for this, right? But I think that there are so many people out there that don't have people dependent on them, that don't have people reliant on them, that should be speaking out about these issues and should be getting involved in these causes. And they're doing nothing, which leaves people like you and I to be the only people vocalizing any of this. There are a lot of people that will watch either this video or one of my videos that will say, oh, geez, that's awful. And then they'll scroll right past it and they'll do nothing. If those people would just take a second to speak out about this, we would see change so fast.
Yeah, even if it's a share of like, oh my gosh, look what's happening. Like
right.
The 2 seconds to share it, and maybe they can't do anything, but spreading the word of like, hey, look what's happening. Like, dude, like pull back the curtain here. Like, yo, look, and stuff, that someone else who is in a position to do something steps up and starts helping. I think It's like, And that's part of like what I'm doing is I'm starting to be like, yo, pull back the curtains. Hello. Lights and sirens. Hello.
Yeah.
Red lights. Pay attention to this.
Yeah.
People need to wake up. Like, good morning. Hello. This is so insane. Like, and I'm just going through, and I could never believe, like, deep down I'm like, this is kind of on Pennsylvania's par, but because I've run for state rep and I've seen some of the stuff of like that's part of why I've run, but like I with some of I've been looking into now, Mike, you might not be able to comment on this just and stuff, so just tell me if you can or can't. But do you think some of this is related to connections of people involved that of influence in local political establishments? I don't know if I said that big enough.
No, that makes sense. It very well could be, but what this seems to me is to be more a matter of perspective and optics than it is anything else. I think honestly, here's the truth of this situation is that we are a group of young, successful men who mind their own business. We are mostly of Christian faith. We are mostly straight. We are mostly white, and we do not match the narrative of what this state wants being seen as being success. So with that, we are exactly who they want to throw behind bars. We are exactly who they want to villainize, and we match the agenda that's being pushed in this country, that people that look like me and people that look like Marcus are the devil and everybody else is an ally. I think that this has a lot more to do with the perspectives, especially around an election, which this very coincidentally just so happened to take place during. So I think that a lot of the times when you see stuff like this and you're asking yourself, why is this happening? I think you kind of have to look at the bigger picture of it and say, who at the end of the day does the dollar go to for this? Like, if you follow the money, your eyes open wide. And right now, these political campaigns needed all the money that they could get. And it seemed like just as soon as they stopped needing the money, they quit caring about violating somebody's rights. So, and to me, it seems very transparently a matter of optics, not necessarily a matter of connections. But I have seen a lot of people in the TikTok comments mention that maybe the complaining witness had some sort of connections. So,
yeah, it definitely. And then you were saying what you were just saying, it made me think maybe they just needed to adjust their numbers. Maybe they arrested too many of different groups. They needed to pad the other side to be like, see, look, we're fair. We're fair. We arrest straight white men just as much as we arrest gay, anyone from the LGBTQ community or minorities. See, we're fair.
And the economic disparity as well, because I think a lot of the times the rhetoric that you hear is, oh, only poor people end up in jail. We aren't poor. You know what I mean? So I think it just kind of matches a lot of that, where when you're trying to pad down those numbers, you look for anybody to make an example out of.
You just kind of happen to be, oh, look, this one looks interesting. We can mess with these two. Like, it just kind of seemed to be.
And I think on top of that, what works against somebody like Marcus is the fact that he is soft-spoken. He's not a very loud person. And so it seems like, you know what, we can throw this one in jail. He's not going to say a word about it. He won't open his mouth because he's kind and he's polite and he's respectable. Well, thank God he's got a bastard of a friend that can't keep his mouth closed. I don't think that they were expecting that. But that's one of those things where I think, you target people that aren't likely to fight back. And I think that they thought that Marcus was that. And I think that they look at a lot of the people that'll be watching this that way as well.
Yeah, I would definitely, that's along the thought I was thinking for that. Now, do you guys have anything else you kind of want to put out there? Anything with how people, if they want to get involved or contact or anything like that, or where you want to send people for like helping just voice it and share this story?
It's like a thing I wanted to say while you guys were talking about the nurses, but I didn't know how to interject. One of the nurses, so when I was in isolation, she came up to me. She was like trying to be like very polite and soft spoken, and she's just like, oh, like we're trying to figure like out like who you are so that we can do your medical and like try and get your medical history. And so I still like told her the name that I told the arresting officer. She's like, okay, I'll like come back in an hour and like we'll do your medical test. And I said, okay. And then she just never returned. And then when I like asked her like about what happened, she just said, you're still just like not telling us who you are. So it just seemed that like she's just like trying to either get information and trying to hide it behind being a nurse, and then just it also seemed like she just really didn't care about what was happening to me.
Yeah, I just saying that is like, I was just thinking, like, what if you had a medical problem, like diabetic, high blood pressure, any other medical condition, and they can't, because like I know we would have to request records, and stuff for medical care if you were going to be any extended time, so that we could get medications, if you needed special diet, anything like that. And if they're saying you're John Doe and have no medical history and we can't identify you, like, how can we treat you medically if you needed just general medical care?
Yeah, so that was just terrifying to me to like see her, I guess, be kind and try to get something out, and then just like even after I told her that, just seeing like the kind of the cold change of heart and then being like shoved back into the corner of the room.
I want to, in my nurse's heart, I want to believe that she really wanted to try and really wanted to help you, and someone higher up than her shut her down and had her stop and said, like, if you want to keep working here, you're going to shut up and leave them alone. Like, I want to believe that, because we take an oath to do no harm and to help and heal and care for. And I think that it would just, by her doing that, is like, it, I want to feel, I feel like it's higher than her pay grade. So any other things you guys want to mention, bring up, that you can bring up? This is your time to kind of have free reign right now.
So one of the things that I want to mention is, I think both Marcus and I are so incredibly grateful for all the support that we've received on social media for this cause. Thankfully, today we were able to make the last video in Marcus's criminal saga. So that was a really good feeling. But now the fun starts. Now the fireworks start. Because when I say that we are going after the state of Pennsylvania tooth and nail through lawsuits, they have never seen hellfire like this be able to be rained down. Thankfully, I have nothing better to do all day than to make sure that every single person that was involved in this is going to be held accountable for the way that they violated the rights of my friend, and the way that they violated my rights, and the way that they impacted my family and his family. So we are going to keep documenting this on TikTok, and now the fun begins. Now we start to see them sweat. Now we start to see them feel bad for what they did. So I am really looking forward to creating that content and putting those types of updates out there. And I hope that people will stay updated and informed on that. I'll be posting mostly on TikTok. My username there is MikeKP1, and that's where people can stay updated and informed there. Also, I was talking with your technical producer before the show started. I think that we'll be back on your show in December once my criminal trial has been sort of resolved and I can speak a lot more freely about the incident and things like that. So also keeping in touch with this podcast, I think, would be a really great way to stay informed on all this, because this is obviously longer form and we can go into more detail than we would be able to in a 1-minute TikTok. But most importantly, if anybody could take one thing away from this episode of this podcast, I hope it would be that you can't think this won't happen to you. It will. I promise you. I was the type of person with a lot of implicit bias before we went through this. Every single time I heard a story like this, I thought, there's more they aren't saying, right? Like, oh, they probably resisted the cop whenever they were being arrested and they deserve this. Or this guy's probably being some kind of jackass and isn't providing his name. Or like, there's more to the story that's not being said. Nope. I have been downright honest with every single part of this. Believe me, it happens, and it can and will happen to you unless you do something about it. So we've got to raise our voices up.
Yeah, and I said my previous guests, the story from them and your guys, it seems like it's not necessarily, I don't think it's happening more frequently. It's the age of social media is bringing it to light more frequently of these citizens that are just being basically railroaded in some way because the cop has some ego complex, or the community or the sheriff or someone in power in their area, in their hometown, has something going on that they become a victim for no reason. And it's just going and insane. So I will definitely have you guys on again, and if you want to come on before December, if you have any updates on anything with Marcus or anything like that, or anything to talk about, gladly have you guys on. I will always share all of your stuff, any of your updates through to my viewers and listeners, because this is definitely has attention, and I want to keep it having attention. Tech producer is telling me I think we have another video. I think it's from one of your guys' friends. Do you want me to share that as well before we kind of wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then if he has it loaded, then we can play it. So it's the one I have. It was Virginia one, the Virginia Beach, just so you guys can kind of see some of the similarities of what's going on.
For sure.
And following the story of Roland Hill's death since this past weekend, Virginia Beach police arrested him last Tuesday.
He was then sent to the Virginia Beach Correctional Center. The sheriff says he was uncooperative and then had a medical emergency. His friends say they don't think that's the whole story. 10 on your sides, Andy Fox is live in the control room with the latest. Andy?
Yeah, Letta and Tom, over the past 2 days, we've been doing a lot of investigating into the death of Roland Hill. We knew his mother, Gail Hill, once worked for the Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office. Friends told us that was true. Today, the Sheriff's Office confirmed Gail Hill was indeed a deputy sheriff from May 1st, 1998 to November 30th, 2005. Friend one has been a family friend of Roland Hill for years. We asked him about Hill's mother, Gail Hill, once working for the Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office. But you grew up knowing Roland and knowing his mother was a sheriff's deputy with the Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office.
Yes.
Right? So that's not a surprise. That's,
No.
That's fact.
Yeah.
We reached out to Gail Hill, but no return from her. We read to friend two, also a close family friend, what Virginia Beach Sheriff Rocky Holcomb wrote in his statement on Hill's treatment. Because when they said they restrained him for his safety, at approximately 8:45, Hill experienced a medical emergency and received immediate aid from deputies and jail medical staff.
Yes.
You think
he did
one
not.
caused
They didn't
the other?
cause. I believe that he got beat until he was brain dead. His jaw was broken, and
we know this from
family. And like I said, he was found in the hospital unrecognizable, and that's not how he entered the jail.
We reached out to the sheriff's office and state police, but neither had any comment. Friend one wanted you to know this about Roland Hill.
Roland grew up in the neighborhood. He was friends with everybody, as far as everybody we hung around. He never had no problems. You know, he had his little twerks to him, but other than that, man, he was a straight, good-hearted, honest guy. You know what I mean?
Friend two, unsure if and when parents were able to see their son.
I'm not positive. I know that as of Sunday night, they were calling in. He was an organ donor, so they called in for him to have his organs harvested, and that's when he passed away yesterday morning. And then his body into Monday, and then his body was given to the medical examiner.
Now, the medical examiner reports tonight the cause and manner of death remain pending. The Virginia Beach NAACP released a statement that the NAACP is concerned about the circumstances surrounding the death of Rollin Hill. While in the custody of law enforcement, we will make further statements. We will hold off on making further statements until the facts and fact-finding concludes. We will keep you updated with details on the investigation.
And we come on the air with breaking news out of Virginia Beach. 5 Virginia Beach deputies are off the job for their involvement in an incident that led to the death of Rollin Hill.
So tonight we know his death was ruled a homicide. This story began in early June. 34-year-old Rollin Hill was arrested for trespassing and resisting arrest. Sheriff Rocky Holcomb said he became uncooperative and combative and was restrained while at the VB Correctional Center. Hill died just days after being sent to the hospital. The sheriff's office initially reported it was a medical emergency, but just hours ago, the medical examiner's office tells us Hill in fact died from asphyxia due to restraint with neck and torso compression. And again, it was ruled a homicide.
And the VB sheriff said previously his office released Hill from its custody and dismissed charges before Hill died. Virginia State Police is still investigating this entire thing. After that, the Virginia Beach Commonwealth's Attorney's Office will decide if any charges will be filed against the 5 fired deputies.
Yeah, so if you saw the picture of Rollin, he looks similar with Marcus here. He was an Eagle Scout, and really they were saying he's like 100 pounds soaking wet and wouldn't hurt a fly normally. And look at what happened to him. Like, it's so scary that people, like you've said, need to go and say, like, the whole "it won't happen to me" thing mentality needs to go out the window. And it's a shame that we need to be in fear of possibly being detained and having all of this stuff go on and some level of torture. It's ridiculous. And if people don't remember from my last thing, Rollin was arrested for trespassing. Like, nothing really crazy. It wasn't assault or anything along those lines. It was just simple trespassing.
Well, and I think even when we're dealing with cases like this, the absolutely critical thing to keep in mind, and at least from context, it sounds this way, Rollin Hill was innocent at the point that he was killed by the police. We are innocent until we are proven guilty. We either have that in this country or we don't. So it doesn't matter what he was arrested for. It doesn't matter if he was breaking and entering. It doesn't matter if he was beating the crap out of somebody. It doesn't matter what he was arrested for. What matters is that this was a pre-trial detainee. This person has the right to the presumption of innocence. And this person was murdered by the state. So I think a lot of the times, like, the reason that we kind of have this implicit bias is because of things like that. It's because the news reports tell us, oh, he was trespassing and he was resisting arrest. No, a cop claims that he was trespassing and that he was resisting arrest. That's all they need. They need no evidence to arrest you. All they need is to be an affiant. They need to have some level of probable cause before the preliminary. But my preliminary hearing wasn't until 7 days after my arraignment and arrest. So until that point, they don't need any evidence. They need nothing other than a statement saying, I believe this happened, in order to execute and murder you. That is scary. It's not the thought of it that's scary. It's the reality of it that's scary.
Yeah. And just as a follow-up for my listeners and stuff like that, the sheriff in Virginia Beach, the election was yesterday for him, and he won his election again. So Sheriff Holcomb is still in control in Virginia Beach. So I kind of want to wrap up a little, but I bring this up on all of my episodes, but this fits with the last few that I've had, is the keeping on the subject of justice and stuff. It's one more name we always like to mention, and it's Ross Ulbricht. Ross is still serving consecutive life sentences, not just one, for creating a website, and it's a non-violent charges, And it's just a clear abuse of power, and we're not going to stop until we demand his freedom. So again, I'm going to call on President Joe Biden while he has the 2 months left in office to pardon Ross Ulbricht. And if that doesn't happen, I'm calling on Donald Trump to keep good on his promise that he's made to us, that he's going to commute Ross's sentence for his time served on day one when he returns to office. This case is about more than just Ross. It's about fighting against a justice system that's punishing people for just pushing for freedom and just being human. And it's insane. And I want to go and we wrap up all the time with that. And I want to put out a thank you to our sponsors, Libertarian Mutual Aid, Libertarian Party Radical Caucus, and the Libertarian Medical Freedom Caucus. These organizations are standing up for liberty and supporting people just like Marcus and Mike for their fight and justice. Again, I want to thank you too for coming on and sharing your story. To our listeners, this isn't just a story about two people. A reminder, it's that justice is something we have to fight for, and we shouldn't, but we have to right now. We have on LP Medical Freedom Caucus's website, lpmedfreedomcaucus.com/freeross, the countdown until the day that Donald Trump said he would pardon him. So we have that now that we started. Again, you guys have anything else you want to wrap up with before we kind of sign off for tonight?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you in depth about a lot of this. I hope that you guys get freedom for Ross, and I hope that you keep telling these stories. It's really important. Thank you.
Thank you as well. It's kind of nice to finally be able to talk about it and let people know what happened and kind of raise some type of awareness for it to try and maybe potentially stop it happening to anyone else in the future. So I thank you for that. And hopefully he does get released either soon or when Donald Trump gets in the office.
So you awoken the mama bear in me, so don't worry. So now we're gonna play. We play both Silk Road and Free Ross. Silk Road's by Tatiana Moroz and Free Ross is by Jordan Page. I want to thank everyone and have a great night.
was a man who did the unspoken. He looked for freedom from the violence. No one is perfect when there's new ground broken. A mess is made and someone gets blamed. He had a dream of harmony as you wish to live out your own. We cannot stand for this, cannot have you fall along the Silk Road. This ain't the movies, there's a war in the streets. The innocent are in jail. We pray for justice and we wanna be free. Hope the truth will prevail. He had a dream of harmony as you wish to live out others cannot